Now we're back. That was super glitchy. I had to like redo the entire thing. All right, cool. So if you're here, drop a comment in the chat. Once we get to 20, as usual, we'll get going with this. But it's a big day. It's a big day for those who know. It's a big day. Oh man, let me see here. I would love a gallon jug of kombucha right now, but I don't actually have it on me. I should probably get myself something special. Get myself a little base drink here. Maybe I'll get some aloe vera juice. Nah, I'm not gonna leave the room. Once you guys are here, drop a comment in the chat. Be sure to retweet on Twitter. Retweet, get some people to see it. All right. El Boliviano fascist. Hey, it's good to see you. What's up? Yeah, you guys have seen the glitches too? I don't know what's going on. I tried to even start it and it shut down beforehand. So it's like this is the third or fourth attempt to get this stream going. But anyway, let's dive right in. We got the 31 people. So this is a big day. So those of you, look, I'm not celebrating anybody's death. Okay, I'm frankly agnostic on the whole thing. Although I think the evidence is pretty persuasive that the monarchy, the queen, was involved with all this stuff. I mean, how far do the cabal and everything, how far do you have to go down the rabbit hole? You don't have to go that far. Her own son, Prince Andrew, was on Epstein Island multiple times. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. It's amazing how they have been concealed, though, how the monarchy's been concealed and protected for all this time. This was a card. So we're going to talk about two things here. Okay, two things with this, because they use deaths symbologically, right? For instance, I'm going to butcher this, but go check when I guess Prince Philip, right, the Queen's husband, when he died. He died on some ridiculous mathematical day that, six. I don't remember I don't remember it. If one of you guys remembers in the chat, please drop it. It's been a long time. But they picked a day for him to die. Like, this is one of the things that they do for ritualistic purposes, to ensconce the individual in stone, and maybe to use his death for specific purposes. So I think when we heard the Queen died, we had thought that was a card that they might play for a while. We thought that might have been some sort of move to distract attention or whatever. And by the way, Jeff, I know what you're talking about online, all the stuff with colonialism and everything. I mean, look, I don't really care one way or another, to be honest. I'm not gonna say that kind of stuff because it doesn't really. I don't actually have any negative feelings towards the Queen on a personal level. I mean, all the stuff we talk about here is this is what we perceive, and it seems to make a lot of sense. But I don't, she's not saying things that trigger me. She would be doing things that would trigger me, but she's not saying it. But at any rate, this is what's interesting. And let's not get into a fight in the chat. I mean, I think we're all on the same page here fundamentally. This was not the kind of day that I would have thought that they would have picked for her. Okay, this is not the day that I would have thought that they would have picked for her. And so I'm going to read some stuff off here because, and I don't really know what to think about this. This is like schizo posting. We haven't done schizo posting in a really long time. So, as always, please take it with a grain of salt. Please take it with a grain of salt. But 9/8 is 17. And this is what somebody said. 114 days left in the year, which is 11/4. Tomorrow's 11/3. 1776 days since the first Q drop. Schizo posting, right? We're schizo posting here. And in addition to that, since March 11, 2020, when the World Health Organization declared COVID a pandemic, to today, it's been 911 days. Now, what's interesting about this, though, is these are not... So you guys have to understand some of the esoteric stuff. So 17 is the 17th letter of the alphabet, which is Q. Okay? 17 has a lot of significance in numerology, but it's a number that the white hats tend to use more often. 1776, it speaks for itself. It's the founding of America. And then 9/11, we look at 9/11 as we think about that day in America, but 9/11 is actually, and the reason that they've done ritualistic stuff on 9/11. 9/11 is Jesus's birthday, Jesus's actual birthday. If you go into it, if you really study it, this is what's very commonly believed. Easter is the celebration of Ishtar. It's actually an occult holiday. I mean, I still celebrate it. I'm not like, party pooper about this stuff. But his birthday was not in December. That was used to mirror Saturnalia because they had the solstice celebrations at Saturnalia. And so we celebrate Christmas in December, but Jesus' birthday was actually in early autumn, which would be in 9/11. It's been inferenced, Jeff, because I can't recall the holiday, but there's a Jewish holiday, and we knew that it was around, it was basically within a certain number of days of that date. So what you have here is 3 different Patriot proofs, and then you have the McAfee channel. This McAfee channel that is commonly believed to be a continuation of the Q operation, although a little bit, a little different stylistically. They were saying from this morning, before the news was even announced, they said TikTok, and they were basically saying, I'm going to read some of this stuff to you, but they were calling this today. I'm going to go back and read earlier today. So they posted a picture of it. They said TikTok Q, and then they said in the morning, it is done, so fucking be it, executed. And this is, make sure you burn the body. And then it comes out later on that she died. And then it starts to quote all these other things beneath it. Justin Bieber, TikTok Q. The Pope, TikTok Q. Jared Kushner, TikTok Q. Snowden, TikTok Q. Huma, Clinton, Lynn Wood, some other guy, I don't know who the fuck this dude is. Podesta, Barack Obama. A lot of Barack Obama ones. Some of these are kind of funny, actually. But anyway, the point is that they're calling it like it was an execution. And I don't know what to think about this, okay? All right, we're doing schizo stuff right now. But let's just all agree that we know that the death of the Queen is significant. We know that the death of the Queen is significant. It's always been significant in the drops. We knew it was going to be one of the final pieces. One of the famous Q posts said something along the lines of, when do you take out a queen? And they're talking about it on the chessboard. What other pieces do you take out before you take out a queen? You obviously is it being metaphorical? Usually it's both, though, right? They're multiple messages, multiple meanings. And what's interesting is that so when the Queen dies, the UK has Operation London Bridge. It's this whole process when it leads up to the funeral, and it's supposed to be 10 days to the funeral. Now, do I think this is 10 days of darkness? No, I don't actually personally think that. But I'm going to throw it out there for you guys because that's another thing that's going around is just the 10 days. Um, so it's going to be interesting to see what occurs. So Jeff, the ultra nuclear MAGA Q is the main account. Um, it is a weird account. It's a weird account. Um, I I can just say this about the account. A lot of it is really hard to understand what's going on. Hard to you're like, oh, is this credible? But they've had things in there that were just so high level, so synced up with things that like Magenta was saying right at the same time. Because coming from like a higher perspective, like when we had the eclipse during Walpurgis night, talking about shifting sort of dimensional structures here. They were really saying, I'm trying to remember the exact details, but they were saying basically the same stuff. Or like you could understand that they were saying the same stuff if you had awareness of both bits of information. And you're like, wow, this is really connecting. I've also heard from, I kind of mentioned this on the last show, but the guy who ran the MJ12 account, who's highly credible, he's not a LARPer, he's actually like Andre, he's very, very genuine and is not trying to scam anything. He takes this account seriously because McAfee, one of the people that McAfee was working closely with on this sort of whack project, is connected to Admiral Rogers, and Admiral Rogers, as we know, is top NSA guy, the one who provided the information about the wiretapping on the Trump Tower to President Trump. We know Admiral Rogers has been involved in the sort of dark war going on here in the intelligence apparatus, and it's very likely that he could be connected to it. You can use your own discernment. 107 also seems to think it's a credible account. But they do like a lot of trolling. It's kind of like a little different. It's a different kind of level. One of the things they keep talking about on the account is that this is basically Space Force is what it sounds like, and that they keep predicting that the launches aren't going to happen. They say, oh, no one's, not, because remember, NASA's trying to launch Artemis, and they keep having to, like, cancel it. And they say, yep, you don't control the sky. So how are you going to get up there, basically? And they keep trolling them and teasing them, and they say, we're going to keep, they keep showing all these solar flares, because the planet's being hit by so many solar flares right now. I don't think people realize it unless you're following it. They're doing major things in terms of changing consciousness. In my perspective, it's affecting the planet, and they're in the channel they're saying, until the diamonds are returned, which is the euphemism for the election, like this stuff keeps happening. Look, it's weird, but I think that what we can comfortably say is that we are moving. We're starting to get some action here, and it's starting to feel like they're on the back foot. And I've been doing some work on really connecting all the pieces from what Tom Luongo's been saying versus what 107 and all the sort of stuff you see geopolitically. I've been trying to sync all this stuff together, and I'm getting a really, really clear picture of it now. It's all working together, which is that you can see how this regime is losing. You can see how they're losing in Europe, of course, but you can also see how they're losing in the States, and you can see the brilliance of Trump's move, that when he let them take the White House, tied them up with all sorts of executive orders that they could not get, there's a lot of power devolved away from DC, didn't hand over control of the nukes. And so you then had this group which thought that, I mean, my contention is that, and I think this is reasonable, obviously, that they didn't think that they were going to get away with it. They spent 4 years from the very, very beginning when Trump was running for president, and certainly after he won. They were talking nonstop about how Trump was going to be a fascist and how he was never going to leave power, and he just wanted to, he's going to be a dictator and all this stuff, and he was going to persecute all the minorities and all these other groups. They were seeding that. They talked about it nonstop. And then they went to try to steal the election, but it was a mess. They knew they couldn't win. So it became a total mess, a total clusterfuck. They assumed, because what they would do if they wouldn't leave power, they knew Trump had control of the military. He had tools in his pocket like the Insurrection Act. And so they were going to not try to take the White House. They were going to try to make it seem like Trump was not going to leave power when he lost, or to create enough confusion to make it seem like that was going to happen. And so when Trump decided that he was going to let them take office, they were surprised. And you can actually see this if you remember watching on Inauguration Day. They didn't really look super happy. They looked kind of like uncomfortable. And they didn't have anybody set up to run the office. Notice that everybody in the cabinet was from Perkins Coie. They had like all backbenchers. They had a fucking idiot like Biden in there. I think it was actually a really big counter move. And because they knew that now they had been, I think that was actually checked. I think that was when they lost the game. Because at that point, they didn't have the nukes. They were basically on this back foot position. And so they've been trying since then to wiggle their way out of it. But I think most of it is they're trying to just damage the country enough that they're trying to get, and then try to make it seem like they still have tons of support to still try to start a civil war, which is why Trump is baiting them into trying to go after him. Because they are in this position, this rapidly collapsing position. It's like they hold DC, but they're losing everything else. And they're losing more and more control over it. Because they're also not just simply being flanked by this stuff, they're being flanked by the Fed. And I think this is the piece that people don't get, especially in our corner, because we hate the Fed. We all hate the Fed, right? But it looks like the Fed is on the other side. It looks like the Federal Reserve, is working against Davos. Because everything that they've been doing since, you could see a little bit of it in 2019, but really you could see it in 2021. Summer of 2021 is when Powell raised the repo rate by 5 points. And then the next January this year, he moved us off of LIBOR to SOFR. And so basically what that means in layman's terms is he started to isolate the U.S. from consequences in Europe. So we're not going to be essentially indirectly collateralizing or bad European debt, bad European money. And it's draining the Fed. It's completely draining the Fed. And we can talk more about the economics, but just for the focus here, Powell, by raising the rates, he's trying to crash the economy globally. It's kind of like they wanted to have the Great Reset, but what I think is not understood by people looking at this is that the system is going to collapse anyway. The system has to collapse. It's rotten. It's not really salvageable. But also, just from the standpoint of this war, somebody has to collapse it. It's like a piece of the puzzle. It's just the question is, where is it going to collapse? You can see Davos was trying to collapse it onto Russia. But then Russia collapsed it on the Davos. And then the Fed is pushed on the other direction. So you have Russia screwing Davos from a supply side standpoint, and you have the Fed screwing Davos from a financialization standpoint. So Europe is getting fucked in both directions because they're losing on the monetary aspect and on the supply aspect. So this is relevant because then you look at the war in the States and you see that Congress is constantly trying to like spend more and more and more because that's trying to create an inflationary thing to stop the effect of Powell raising rates, because as Powell raises rates, that's going to lead to a collapse in the markets. So that's where we're going right now. But you can see that all these different pieces on the board coming together, and you can start to see how they're getting to checkmate. Checkmate's coming. It's coming because they have no escape economically. They can't do anything to the Fed. The Fed keeps raising rates on them. How much more can they spend? And then, so that's gonna hit the economy. And then they're constrained by the military on the other side. They can't, that's what you see in Ukraine right now. What you see in Ukraine is madness. I mean, they are throwing huge attacks against the Russians right now. And they've had some very, very marginal tactical successes. Arguably, you could say this. And like, they maybe take a town. And it does look like, the Russians could have put more on the line. But fundamentally, I mean, they're bringing to bear so much artillery in defense of this that the Ukrainians are just taking catastrophic losses. I mean, losing like a whole division. It's 10,000 men, a whole division in Kherson. And now we have this attack going on in Kharkov area, which is probably smarter. They should have started there because it's it's more wooded, so you have a little bit more cover. But at any rate, you can see like what they're doing. I mean, and you're seeing more and more equipment from all over the place, like equipment that they haven't announced that's coming from the States now. Like, they're just trying to send anything they possibly can. It looks like a last-ditch effort. It looks like they're throwing the kitchen sink now, and they're hoping something will stick because they have no way out. They don't even have really the nuclear option. They might try to create a situation where it looks like it's going to occur, but that's where we're at. Italipino, if I'm a Fed, I really fucked up. I really fucked up big time because I took the bitch position in the federal agency because I apparently get to be treated like I'm not a Fed. I got to go through all the shit that a Fed wouldn't have to go through. But, anything to keep up the appearances, right? So, yeah. And Elato, just as you said here, London Bridge has fallen, Vatican moving all funds back. I didn't know the Knights of Malta dissolved. That's interesting. But yeah, the Vatican's moving all money back around the world back on October 1st. Guys, it's happening. It's fucking happening. I mean, can you imagine this? Can you believe it? How long we've been waiting? And you can see it all happening. And it's just getting started. I mean, it's going to be super wild. It's really going to be wild. It's going to be wild over here in the States the next few months. I really recommend that you keep your loved ones close and you stay out of the way. Because, I mean, it's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen because there's such a confluence of things. But Q3 reporting, not going to look good. It's not going to look good. It's not going to look good. We'll see how it plays out. I'll ask any questions in the chat. I'm going to answer. So send me what's going on. They got banned today. Jose, what does that mean? I know that Bannon was arrested and I guess this was sentencing. So what did he get? What do they sentence him to? Is he in prison now? Did they put him in the prison? And yeah, we got Pluto coming in. Pluto comes into Aquarius this March. Then it goes out, then it comes back, then it goes out again, and then it comes back for good. So that little dance goes on through November 2024. And, I'm basically of the opinion that this war continues through 2024. This specific war. We have other wars to fight down the line. But this specific war against the cabal goes on to 2024. But there's, in the States especially, there's going to be some big flip here. If I'm looking at this, I feel like in the States we're looking at something by year's end, absolute latest by the spring next year, because of what's going on. I would, especially with the midterms coming up, I look at this, I'm looking at like by year's end. Not before the midterms, but like November, December, late November, early December. It's kind of where I'm looking with this stuff. And then I think we have a wild winter. And then maybe in the spring, we have a new Congress seated because there's going to be some delay with the elections or something. I don't know. I don't know exactly. I really don't know. Anybody who tells you they know is full of shit. But I think then we have a big cleaning of house that's going to be going on. And we're not done in the States, but Europe is in particular where we're going to start to see revolution. Like, it's going to be happening all over, but Europe is like, I think those of us in America don't realize that we're probably a lot more lucky in the grand scheme of this conflict, because America is so much closer to the tipping point than these European countries. Like, I don't think Europe is going to get out of it until the very end of this stuff. And I also think that you're going to see similar stuff in Canada, and I really think that there's going to be some situation on the border with Canada. I don't know if it's going to be refugees coming from Canada. I don't know if it's ultimately some action the U.S. takes in Canada. But Canada and U.S., like the U.S. is going to clean up Canada first. There's a deep connection between the two countries, and I think it's going to be reflected here. Yes, I think that's right, Jeff. And there may yet be a restart, because Trump himself said that he wants to be put on the ballot for the midterms. So if they postpone it, we may have something like that, where they have, like, think about this for a second, that we have in 2022 midterms, we have it later on. We have to vote maybe next spring for it. But what you get is, you have people running for the Senate in both 2020 seats and 2022 seats, and the full House and the presidency. Some really, really massive. I mean, I'm just speculating here. We know that there's going to be a big red wave. How long would military occupation last? I mean, to me, it seems like I could see it going through the winter. I could see it being like a winter occupation. I don't think that the military is going to, I think they're going to want to return civilian power as soon as possible. That's what I think. But there'll still be tons of stuff inside the country to deal with. I don't know. Maybe it takes longer than this. But, we'll get through it either way. Maybe we'll get through it either way. But, so they're hitting him they hit him with a new indictment, so this wasn't sentencing. That's crazy, Jose. They're hitting Bannon with money laundering charges. It's amazing. It's amazing. They really just throw them out there at people whenever it's a political opponent. It's like Stalin said, show me the man and I'll find the crime. And it's not even a matter that they can prove it. It's just to drain them. I mean, it's expensive. It's exhausting. So, yeah, guys, it's coming to a head, though. I mean, it's not going to be over, but it's coming to a head. We're going to start to see a real change in consciousness as the people finally start to claw their way out of this. Um, and so, enjoy the show, as they say. Enjoy the show. But I can tell you, I mean, it's going to be so dark, though. It's really going to be dark. It's going to be a lot worse than people realize. I mean, we know Michael Burry sold, I think I mentioned it last time, sold all of his stocks except for prison stocks, talking about 50% drawdown the markets. I mean, all of us are going to be fine. You know, we're all prepared mentally, probably to a large extent, financially, or at least, we're getting the fundamentals that we need. But for the normies, this is going to be it's going to be a rough experience. It's going to be a rough experience. It's going to be shocking. But it's a wake-up call. I think the economic stuff blows out late October. I'm just giving like bullshit time. We don't know the timelines, but I'm just saying late October, surprise, economic tanking. Maybe at the same time you have something going on with Taiwan at that moment. Maybe. We don't know if they're going to continue to play that card. It's quieted for now. That doesn't mean anything. And that's going to be right before the midterms. That's going to give them more of an impetus to say, okay, we have to postpone. And then I think that's when we enter into this, like, okay, now if they postpone the elections, then we are no longer in like, now what you have is you have all the justification possibly for the military, for the upper echelon, right? You have all the justification you'd possibly need, with law of war manual, belligerent power, etc. Aloto, I do not think you should pull all money out of banks. Look, none of this is financial advice, okay? Not financial advice. The only advice that I feel really comfortable about giving is that you should not have in your bank more than the FDIC amount. But all you have to do is start another account. And if you move it to that account, then I think don't quote me on that, but I think it's protected. I think it's just $250K per individual on the account. So I think you can have multiple accounts, it's fine. Just don't do that, because if there is a bank run, that'll happen. If some banks have some issues, your stuff will still be protected, theoretically, right? But it's really tough to say. I mean, in the short term, in this initial economic phase, we're going to have the dollar relatively stronger, but we don't want gold to tick off yet, apparently, because that would help Davos, because it would help to bolster the euro, because Davos does have some gold holdings. So if we keep the price of gold low, we really squeeze the euro. But if the price of gold goes up, different story. However, at a certain point, once Powell breaks the economy, and I'm looking at this, when we're talking like Q1, Q2 next year, you're going to see printing again, or at least a revaluing of the currency to some sort of fiat. To some sort of like gold, to gold, basically. And I do think crypto at some point in here is going to be valuable as an off-ramp. And look, I mean, they are going to be trying, certainly in Europe, to create a, what's the word I'm looking for? God, what the fuck am I talking about? CBDC. And it's important to understand the difference between the CBDC that the Fed and Wall Street are rolling out versus the CBDC that Europe's trying to push. So one is a CBDC that is like a wholesaler. So the way to look at it, this is the Fed one. This is the one in the States. This is basically that rather than have something like SWIFT, just kind of like that moves the money between banks, that the Fed is going to take over that role. So there's not going to actually be a central bank digital currency, although it, theoretically you could move it to that direction in the future. But basically, the Fed just acts as a clearinghouse for money that moves between banks. And the main reason that I understand that the Fed would be doing this is to basically deal with cryptocurrencies, because they can't deal with the speed of transfer of cryptocurrencies. The Fed has to get into it themselves if they want to stay relevant. It's different from the one that Davos wants to do, is trying to implement now in Australia and in Europe, which is that the Fed basically, the banks are all completely subservient. They're like subsidiaries of the Fed. And, you essentially just have the Fed can turn off anybody that they want to turn off. I know it's somewhat of a slippery slope. We're not done with the banks, but enemy of your enemy is your friend. J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs clearly decided that they wanted to take the knives out against BlackRock. This is Tom Luongo stuff. I highly recommend you check it out. It's very detailed. It's very convincing. It's very convincing that J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs, they still got their power. They got their boy Powell with them, private equity Powell, and that they do not want to lose their power. So they're not going to let Davos centralize all the money in the world around them. Tom Luongo, Luongo. So yeah, just a really quick comment here on Tate. Yeah, I mean, because I don't want to go too much into it, but yeah, Tate is playing a big role in the awakening. I mean, you don't have to like everything he says, you don't have to agree with him, but he is waking people up. He's calling people out. He's calling the cabal out. He's helping guys to understand and take their power back. I mean, I think what he's doing, I said this on my video on YouTube, you guys can check it out, what I think about Andrew Tate. Goes into this in detail for 10 minutes, but he's playing the role of triggering people and waking them up, because he's got that braggadocious attitude which draws people's attention. And then when they're focused on him, then he tells them the truth, or tells them, aspects of the truth that piss people off, but it starts conversations. Look, I can't do a video. I'm not upset about this, by the way, but I can't do a video. Like, I get messages all the time. What about this with Tate? What about this with Tate? I love it. Like, cool. Like, I everyone knows I support him. But this is just an example of how he's managed to implant himself in people's consciousness. People care what he's doing. It's just like Trump. You guys remember, everyone was like, what is Trump? Can you believe what Trump said? What did Trump say? So, let's see here. Sasyop, I did talk about Europe already not looking good for winter. Yeah, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. If you're in Europe, I mean, definitely, if you can get yourself a form of heat. A lot of people getting wood-burning stoves and getting firewood. Sounds crazy to even say that shit. But it looks like even with rationing, even with heavy rationing across Europe, still won't be enough gas to last through all of winter. Might get you to March, but that's still realistically in Europe another month. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, the whole economic structure in Germany is going to go down because there's no energy for it. They're going to have to conserve it. And yeah, Jeff, Biden's doing all the stuff that they accused Trump of doing, and he is trying to act like a dictator, because now they're trying to switch the roles. That's what they threw it out there. They're like, oh, well, maybe, we couldn't start a civil war by making Trump play that role, so we'll play that role. It doesn't matter. Haha. People will still go against it. But it doesn't look like Biden's presentation earned him any applause from his own side. So they bailed on that. They just don't know what to do. They're fucked. They don't know what to do. They're fucked. That's why I can't handle the doom posting. It's like, you guys really think that they're this powerful? I mean, yeah, don't look. I'm not trying to count them out. They got tools up their sleeve. God knows, for even doing stuff like this broadcast, I could get, hit, right? But I'm not trying to make anybody naive, but just because you have, in by the time you got to the end of 1944, you knew Germany was going to lose the war. You knew it. Honestly, by the Battle of Kursk, if you really knew what you were talking about, you knew it. Like 1943. Summer of 1943. So, I mean, at that point, it was just a matter of time. That didn't mean that people weren't going to die, that it wasn't going to get, in some ways, worse before it got better. That's where we're at. We are about to hit the beaches. That's what's going on right now. This is like the Normandy invasion. So, look at it like that wasn't it. That wasn't the end of the war. But it was the beginning of the end of the war. And more people died in that last period. It was harder. That end of the war was harder than the rest of the war. That's how it is. It's tough to finish it. But that doesn't mean that we should freak out and think it's not going to happen, just because it gets scarier. There's one other comment I wanted to respond to here before I go to the bottom ones. Stat Void, you said the war will never end. It's a war as old as Genesis, but we are certainly in a highly pivotal battle. Well, let me kind of push back against that, only for this reason. I agree that that this is not done, because time is on an infinite loop. And so, obviously, eventually we return to this place. But if you look at it from the standpoint of the yugas, the cycles, we have been in the Kali Yuga, the Iron Age. This is really interesting to think about, because when you go back and you think, oh, we had the Bronze Age and we had the Iron Age, but what if there was double meanings to that? Like, they talked about it like it was tools, the things that people use, but what if there were double meanings to that? I mean, in the Kali Yuga, these were literally different eras of consciousness experience on the planet. And it's interesting that when you go to Genesis, you hear about people living for like around 1,000 years. And in the Kali Yuga, they talk about that. In the Bronze Age, people will live about 1,000 years. And then when they get to the Iron Age, they're going to live about 100 years. And that it's a shift. It's a different era. And so this battle between good and evil, once we're moving right now into the Golden Age. So it goes Iron Age, it goes Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age. And when you get to the Golden Age, apparently, like, you live a really, really long time, everything's different. And this has to do with, from what I understand, locations in the ecliptic. So think of the reason that they have certain structured amounts of time is because it depends on what part of the galaxy the sun is moving through. So in the Iron Age, I think you're in maybe a dark area. You don't get as much light from the galactic central sun. And then when you get into the Golden Age area, you're filled with tons of it. And I think this is connected to the solar flares, all the volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. The planet is literally changing because it's being hit with all sorts of rays that are coming from the sun, yes, but they're also coming from the galactic central sun. We're being hit with tons and tons of shit. Much more energy than before. And so we will eventually go back to the Iron Age, but that's going to be a long time. I mean, it seems like, if I can speculate, that was like Lemuria. Early Lemuria was the Golden Age. And then that transitioned into, when Lemuria fell and we had the Age of Atlantis, that was the Silver Age. And then after Atlantis fell, you had the Bronze Age. And now we're in the Iron Age. So that's my little slight pushback here. Let's see. Yeah, what's amazing is people who still believe the narrative. I have close friends that are so unaware, it's truly mind-boggling. Well, look, listen to it. I mean, you know, listen to some of the stuff we're talking about right here. It is kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy because if you at all only exist in the box that's provided for you, this kind of stuff is just impossible to talk about. It's impossible to conceive. You have to like leave that paradigm. And then you hit the next problem, which is that there's so much bullshit in the alternative truth community. I mean, like how much stuff did we fall for, and we might still be falling for stuff now. I mean, I think we've gotten a lot better, but we've fallen for so much crap over and over and over again. Different people come in with a new thing. Even if like so even if somebody did want to question, they're like, yeah, this doesn't make sense, but then they get out there and they see like some harebrained ideas about, like with the vax, for instance. They might be like skeptical about it, but then you show them some alternative theory from Stu Peters, who I have nothing against him. But I mean, Stu Peters entertains a lot of really out there ideas, which I think is healthy. But if you're like a, normie and you see some of this stuff, you might be like, okay, this is way too absurd. People are going to become zombies. Okay, I'm not going to listen to this stuff anymore. And it's tough to know. It's tough to know. So yeah, but we are fundamentally dealing with people just very, very afraid of what's going on, afraid of the truth. They're starting to know that something's wrong. But yeah, there's nothing you can say about it. What are you supposed to say at this point? I mean, I don't know whether it was the election or maybe it was by the subsequent summer with the vax, but at some point in 2021, it just became pointless to say anything anymore. It's just pointless to talk about it. People are going to make their decisions. And that's some destination that they chose for themselves. And all we can do is, when everything's dark and everybody really like doesn't know what's going on, we will be the light. That's what we're supposed to do. That's when we're like, yeah, what do you want to know? Let's open a bottle of wine and let's start from the beginning. And maybe at that point people are going to start willing to receive it. Because guys, I got to say this also. I mean, we haven't been talking about it a lot recently because I don't think it's germane at the moment. But once we get into 2023, I mean, I don't think it's going to be year's end. It could be. But once we get into 2023, we got the alien stuff. I mean, there's going to be alien disclosure. There's going to be all sorts of shit. So, like, everything that we've been talking about right now, there's just whole other levels. So, but there's no point trying to go pick people up if they're not open at this point. Save your energy. You're not going to persuade them. They will come to you when they want to know. Jose, what do you want to know? What kind of history do you want to know? What do you want to know about all this stuff? Jeff, two competing forces, the Great Reset, the Great Currency Reset, resulting in QFS, both crashing the economy. 100%. 100%. Everything is, everything dark is being used for light. They're like linked together right now. And I think that is where a lot of these truthers get into trouble, is that they don't see it that way. They see the fact that things are going down as evidence that the dark is winning, not understanding that this momentum it's already happening. There's all this momentum behind it already. If the good guys didn't push it down, the bad guys would push it down on them. Like, it's a matter of who is going to own this and who's going to be able to rebuild from the chaos. That is what the fight's about. It's not about it happening or not happening. It's happening. Who is going to take advantage of it and use it for their own faction? That's what it is. That's what it's all about. Now, once we have this win against the Cabal, we're not done, guys. Don't worry. We're going to have COVID Cabal is going to be going on for a long time, well beyond COVID and well beyond Cabal. It's going to be like war room pandemic. It's going to be going on for years. And the reason why it's going to be going on is because there is a false awakening, okay? We are not going to, it's going to take us 20 years maybe, 10, 20 years to really get the world we're looking for, because we don't want, like, we're going to work with them now. And this is another thing I try to explain to people who are like, oh, why do you care about this, you know? Like, they're just two sides of the same coin. To an extent, that might be true. You know, there's a lot of people who are working with the white hats, so to speak, but with, like, their fingers crossed. Like, you know, they realize the Cabal's not going to make it, or at least that half of the Cabal's not going to make it. So they're trying to create their own world. And, you know, you can say this is the first beast and the second beast. I don't think it's Trump, by the way. But this is the next challenge will be fighting against ostensibly benevolent structures to develop a global structure that really honors the individual. Like, we don't want to just outsource power to some benevolent dictator who gives us all sorts of stuff. We don't want that. That's a scam. There's a Faustian bargain in there. So we're going to have to cross that bridge. But right now, we're dealing with overt evil. Really seriously dark and disgusting shit. Pat, loads of info coming in in QHHT sessions. What's that mean? Let me know what that acronym stands for. I think I've seen it before. That 5D consciousness arrives in a few years, all different sources, non-weird truth communities. Yeah, I mean, we are being upgraded right now to that. So, I mean, when you say a few years, are you talking like 2030? Because 2030 seemed to be the transition point. But my sort of sense, and you know, how do I really know this? It's really hard to have any idea about this kind of stuff because the world will look so different by that point. But we have the end of this war, and then it's just a fucking mess. The world's in shambles. All the systems have to be rebuilt. It's going to be fun. We get to actually rebuild it and do it the right way without people, for the most part, who are trying to fuck us in the ass and steal from us all the time. It's going to be a good couple of years if you think of it from that perspective. But it will be painful. There's going to be a lot of people sick and dying from there's going to be a lot of poverty because structures will be broken and people are going to have to start over. But it's going to start over fresh. I can see by the 2030s that we're going to have that more or less sorted out. We're going to start to have a new global governance structure. But I don't think that we start to get to the point where we start to really be, like, throughout this entire time period, there's going to be more and more people with psychic abilities. It's going to be mainstreamed. People being able to heal. That stuff's going to be mainstream. There's going to be technology built off of it. But I really see like another massive, like, you can say the golden age starts to hit in the 2030s maybe, but mid 2040s, 2046 is another very significant date astrologically. I think that that's when we start to really see a totally new generation of kids. Like our grandkids, if you're a millennial, your grandkids that are going to start to come out at that point are going to be fucking wild because they're going to have been born completely in 5D Earth. And I think that it's just going to be a very different world at that point. Who knows what they're going to be able to do? Hey, yes, Hopeful, can you DM me that on Twitter? Because I'm not going to click the link while I'm doing the stream. Pat Room Cabaldemic. Oh, Jose, yeah, that's right. We did stop right before World War II, like 2 years ago in December. We've had blue balls since. I don't think I can do it tonight. I don't think I can do it tonight. I'll have a dedicated show to it, where we'll go in. We'll polish things off. Yeah, because that's where things actually get interesting, Jose. Not to give you a little bit more blue balls, but that's where things get interesting with the aliens and the infiltration of the government. Project Moonshadow, Treaty of Giardia, a lot of very interesting stuff. Okay, quantum healing hypnosis is Dolores Cannon's thing. All right, cool. Yep. What problem has humanity not persevered against? From warlords to dictators, politicians next on the chopping block. 100%. We're done with politicians. We're getting statesmen. We're getting statesmen. That's where we're going. We will rebound fast. It's going to be like half a decade, 7 years maybe. Yeah, we'll rebound fast. I have no question about it. I have no question about it. Because those of us, they say hard times make strong men. A lot of us are going to be strong as fuck and determined. And we're not going to have the same level of barriers that we used to have. And any barriers that we get, we're going to deal with. That's what people don't understand. And even in the truth community, they actually think that after all this stuff we're going through, that we're just going to suddenly turn it all over to somebody else to run it for us again. No. Like, those who decided to help overthrow the cabal with us, cool. Like, you're not going to control everything in the end. You'll have to gradually withdraw your power, and you'll still have a good position, but you're going to have to compete as equals. You won't be able to dictate to all of us anymore. That's not how it's going to happen. People will call me naive, but as the consciousness changes, this is what they don't get, okay? The political structure, the economic structure is reflective of the consciousness of the planet. So if you have the consciousness of the planet has remained at 190 like it did for a long time, well, no fucking kidding. You're only going to have structures that mirror that. But we're inching out of that now. The consciousness of the planet is moving up. And as that consciousness changes, it won't allow those structures to take place. That's what you're seeing right now. You're seeing the collapse. Until we return to this same place in the cycle, which is some 100,000 years from now, we're done. It's over. It is over. We are going to something new. Do you think people can keep their PTSD-related empath abilities and still get rid of PTSD issues? Yeah, I think so. I think PTSD is just a especially with the new energies coming in. But I think PTSD, you can say it's connected to I don't want to overgeneralize here with it, but like anxious attachment stuff. It's very much like you're trying to feel into things. It's a hypersensitivity. You can learn to calibrate that. You can learn when to feel into someone and when not to. When to create a barrier, when to be open up. I think people will learn that skills. I mean, it's going to be a period of great healing, incredible healing, all through the 2020s and 2030s. What's another few weeks of blue balls compared to a few years? Pat, do you think these med beds are real or total horseshit? I think that they're horseshit. Personally, I think they're horseshit. I kind of take Cliff High's view on that, but it's not that I don't think that we will have something similar. Cliff says the tech doesn't really work at this level, that you could cause a lot more damage than help just by beaming people with certain stuff, with certain waves right now, because we're electric. But theoretically it could work. I think theoretically it could work. I don't think we have them yet. I don't think we have them. I don't believe anybody who says that we're just going to get everything handed to us. I don't believe that. I think it's incongruent. It creates a savior complex. I mean, even the stuff with like the military coming in. Look, if we didn't have them, we'd figure it out ourselves. The people, the only reason there's this plan and that these groups are able to do this stuff is because the consciousness of the people is rising up. If the consciousness of the planet were not rising up, there would be no plan to overthrow the cabal. What they're trying to do is to try to help it be as clean as possible. But it's going to happen. It's inevitable. If that's the case, is scalar energy BS too? I don't think it's BS. What I'd like to say is, like, there's no question that sound heals and that certain frequencies affect you in a positive way. The argument that Cliff has is that there's different parts of your body will need, like, it has to do with the way the cells communicate with each other. So you won't be able to just like heal the entire body by just blasting someone with a certain frequency, because it may help in certain areas but not in other ones. I'll have to review the video. I don't know. I do think that there's a lot to healing energies, though, healing waves. It's just that, can you use it at this juncture to completely regenerate a limb or something by just blasting waves at someone? I'm not sure about that. There might be med beds that are like medical beds that conduct various high precision surgeries, kind of like we saw in Prometheus, right? What is Cliff social now? I haven't seen him on Twitter or Gab in a long time. Well, that's because he's been banned from Twitter, and I don't know if he uses Gab or not. I don't know if he uses Truth Social or not. I think he uses Truth Social. But I only look at his stuff on BitChute. That's where he posts his videos. And, look, Cliff's not infallible. He's got a shit ton of stuff wrong. Really off on timing for stuff. I don't know if he's on Rumble, but he's on BitChute. He's on BitChute. I mean, people repost his videos all the time. So, any last questions, guys? I think I'm all talked out. Any last questions real quick? Rumble's too boomer. Any last questions? Are we all good? All right. I think that's it. We'll see what the next few days bring, but we'll talk next week, or at least a week after. I think, like I said, a lot's happening, so we'll keep these going. Love you guys as always, and I will see you next time.